there, folks. Welcome to the channel. I'm glad you can make it because today's episode is extremely exciting for me. We're going to take a dish that is near and dear to my heart and try to turn it into a delicious sausage. Let me tell you something about gumbo. I love it. Matter of fact, in a week, we're going to be making another 40 gallons of it just to re-up our inventory. Rule number one, if you're a Cajun, you can never run out of gumbo. So without further ado, let's make the chicken and sausage gumbo sausage, shall we? Let's get started with the casing. We're going to be using a 35 millimeter hog casing. This is going to be a thick sausage. Honestly, you could use whatever size casing you want. 28-32 would work as well. Anyway, we're going to add a little baking soda to the water that casing is going to soak in. Basically a half a teaspoon for every 2 cups. And this is going to alkalinize the water, make it super slippery. Doesn't do much for tenderness, but will certainly make it slide on and off the horn super easy. And if you have any knots, you can get them out pretty quick. So we're going to put this in our fridge and let it hang out in the fridge overnight. That's going to give us maximum tenderness. Let's go ahead and look at the meat selection for this wild chicken and sausage gumbo sausage. Pork back fat, that's the fat that we're going to be using for this sausage. And you'll see how important it is here in just a minute. We're also going to be cutting it up into pieces that can fit into our grinder. Next, we want pork shoulder. So I'm just going to cut a little piece off and then also cut that into more manageable pieces. What I'm looking for is a ratio of 70% lean to 30% fat. And this is what that looks like. We've got our pork shoulder, our pork back fat. We do want to partially chill this before we grind it. So into the freezer it goes, and while that's chilling, let's make sausage number 2. This one is going to be a chicken sausage. Now we've got drums, we've got thighs, we've got chicken breast. In this particular case, I'm not going to be using the chicken skin. I am going to save that because we do use chicken skin for other chicken sausages, but I will be using the breast meat, the thigh meat, things like that. And once again, in the description box below, it's going to have all the details of the exact way that we prepared this particular sausage. But all we're going to do is cut that up into small pieces, just like we did with the pork. Now, I like adding a combination of dark meat and white meat to my chicken sausage. The dark meat gives it beautiful juiciness, while the white meat gives it great body. But if you want to go all dark meat, like all chicken thigh, you can certainly do that as well. I probably wouldn't go all breast meat because it does have a tendency to dry out. But here's what our chicken platter looks like. We've got breast meat, thigh meat, and then we have our pork fat ready to go. Also a ratio of 70% lean to 30% fat into the freezer so that can chill properly. Let's look at our spices. So we're basically going to be making 2 completely different sausages for this recipe. One's going to be a Cajun pork sausage and the other one's going to be a chicken sausage. So we need to have 2 completely different spice profiles for no other reason than to just keep it interesting. Let's start off with a little salt. Next, we're going to add some black pepper. I'm going to add just a touch of Instacure number 1, and then we're going to add a binder called potato starch at a rate of 2%. And there we have it. That's our chicken sausage. Let's make the Cajun pork sausage. We've got salt, Instacure number 1. We're going to be adding some cracked black pepper. We also have garlic powder, onion powder, and then some cayenne for heat. Let's not forget about the paprika. And of course, we're going to be adding a small amount of a binder. We're using potato starch. You could use any binder that you want. This is what our 2 mixes are going to look like. We're not going to combine them right now. You're going to see what we're going to do here in a second. You can't have gumbo without these 3 vegetables. You got celery, onion, and bell pepper. The trinity of vegetables. This is how just about every Cajun dish begins. We're going to dice all this up and toss it into a bowl. And I probably got way more than I needed, but that's okay, because as you can imagine, we use these 3 vegetables constantly. All right, there we go. So what we're going to do next is cook this down, and then we're going to separate the amount that we need for each one of the sausages. I'll show you how to do that here in a second. Meanwhile, we need to prep some chives. If you would rather use green onions, that's okay too, not a problem, as both work well for this recipe. And so we're going to set that into a bowl, and then we're going to divide that up for each one of the sausage recipes. Next up, we've got a little parsley. I happen to be using curly parsley because that's what's most common where I live. But if you have Italian flat leaf parsley, that works great as well. We're just going to finely chop that up and set it to the side. It's now time to cook our vegetables. So in a skillet, a little bit of oil, and we're going to cook these until they begin to soften and just take on a little bit of color, and that is perfect. Off the heat, let's let it cool, and it's time to grind our meat. Here in front of me, we have 3 grinder plates, a coarse, medium, and fine. Depending on the kind of sausage that you like, you could choose to grind this sausage on a coarse plate or a fine plate. That's a 4.5mm plate. What I think I'm going to do is grind on a 6mm plate. What I'm looking for is a sense of uniformity between the two sausages that we're going to be making. Personally speaking, I like the texture that a 6mm grind delivers, and so that's what we're going to be using. But like I said earlier, you can use any plate that you want. It's a personal preference. Let's put on the knife, put on the plate, and then we're going to go ahead and lock it down. All right, we're in business. Let's look at the meat. Our Cajun pork sausage meat is partially frozen. Let's take a quick temperature check so you can see what I'm looking at. I'm looking for anything under 34 degrees Fahrenheit, preferably between 30 and 34. That's what I like to target. Same thing with the fat. Absolutely perfect. This is going to deliver a beautiful grind. If it's too cold, let's say it's completely frozen, what you're going to end up doing is shaving the meat, and you're going to end up with a very, very fine textured sausage. And so you definitely don't want to do that. Here's our 6mm grind coming out beautifully. I'm loving the way this looks so far. The end result should be a very pebbly grind. You should be able to grab a handful of it, and it should feel relatively loose. It should not feel greasy in any way. All I did was grab a small handful of already ground meat to stick it back into the hopper. And there we go. That's our Cajun pork sausage mix. Let's now do the chicken sausage. There's our two batches. We've got chicken, we've got pork. We're making 1 kilo of each. Let's take the temperature. Before you mix your spices into the meat, you definitely want the temperature below 34 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's important to, re-chill if necessary between each step. Let's look at the chicken sausage. We're at 30 degrees. Okay, so no problem. We are ready to mix our spices into the meat. Now, one thing we have not talked about is the liquid that we're going to be adding to this recipe. We're going to be adding some liquid from a freshly made pot of chicken and sausage gumbo, one of my all-time favorite foods and a dish we've been making for several decades. If you live in South Louisiana, you can find pre-made gumbo just about anywhere. Most restaurants will carry it. Your supermarkets, your gas stations will often have gumbo ready to go, whether it's seafood or chicken and sausage. If that's not an option, I'm going to put a link in the description box below for a gumbo base. This is basically instant gumbo. All you do is add water and you are in business. Now, if neither one of those options work and you'd like to make it yourself, let me give you a quick little preview of how gumbo is made. I'll put a recipe link for our gumbo in the description box below. In a large pot, we're going to add equal portions flour and oil. What we're doing here is making a roux. On a medium heat, we're going to constantly stir this flour oil mixture and basically cook it until it starts to take on a beautiful caramel color. We're then going to add our vegetables. This is where the celery, bell pepper, and onion come in. And in that super hot roux, we're going to continue to cook as those vegetables soften. At this point, our fire is on a medium, and we're going to add our chicken stock, the spices, our chicken, and our sausage. And we're going to let it cook until the chicken is done. And guess what? You've just made gumbo. All right. I might have oversimplified it a bit, but you get the idea. Be sure to check the description box below for a link to this delicious gumbo recipe. Enjoy yourself a bowl, and don't forget to separate a little bit of that liquid if you plan on making the chicken and sausage gumbo sausage. All right, so there we go. We're going to set that to the side. Next, we have our sauteed vegetables. They've already been pre-measured based off of what the recipe calls for, and that's going to go right there. We also have a little bit of garlic. We didn't really talk about garlic, but you got to have a touch of garlic in this Cajun chicken and sausage gumbo sausage recipe. We have our chives and parsley already separated, and now that we have our mise en place, it's time to mix everything together. I'm going to be using my KitchenAid for this, and we're doing 2 separate batches, and it really doesn't matter in which order you add the ingredients. You can add them all at one time. You can add them a little bit at a time. It doesn't matter, just as long as by the time you finish, they're all in there. And what we're looking for is that classic sticky sausage batter, a batter when you hold it and turn your hand upside down, the sausage meat will have no problem sticking to the underside of your hand. Once you get to that place, you are done. And for both of these, I want to say they took really no longer than about 90 seconds, maybe a little bit longer. The KitchenAid does it very quickly, and if you're not careful, you can overmix it. So let's kind of see where we're at. I'm loving the way this feels. The pork sausage looks great. The chicken sausage, also great. Looks like we are done, and it's time to get this into a casing. We're going to do something we've never done here on this channel, and we're going to take both of these sausage batters, and combine them into one sausage. And let me show you how I plan on doing that. This is a 5-pound sausage stuffer from the sausage maker. We're going to be using the 3/4 inch horn, and we're going to start by taking a little bit of that sausage meat. In this case, I got both flavors. We're just going to slam it right into the bottom. And what I want to do is I want to alternate between, the pork sausage and the chicken sausage and kind of create these beautiful layers. And so the idea for this particular sausage is that when we're done, we're going to have areas that are chicken, areas that are pork, and hopefully they come together with this one beautiful texture that resembles a chicken and sausage gumbo. All right, so here we go. We've got our casing. It's been soaking overnight. There's beautiful translucency right there. You can see my fingers, no problem. And we're just going to put a little bit of that water inside that casing. That's going to help it slide onto the horn easy, easy. Once we do that, your casing should be able to slide back and forth without any problems. And that's going to help reduce any kind of casing blowouts that you might have. At this point, you can either tie it off, or you can wait till you have sausage meat poking out the end. Either way you do it is fine. If you are going to tie it off, you are going to want to poke a hole with the sausage pricker right at the end of that casing, just like this, so that any remaining air that's in that horn can flow out easily. We're putting nice even pressure at the tip of that horn so that the sausage meat can pull the casing off the horn. Looks absolutely beautiful. Ooh, this is going to be a thick sausage. And I'm loving the way it came out. Look at that. We've got a beautiful combination. I don't know if you can see it with the lighting, but you've got a combination of pork and chicken sausage kind of all mixed up. Each bite should represent its own flavors and textures. And when we squeeze it, we can squeeze all the way down and make an indentation, so I'm not going to have any problems linking this up. The size of the links that you make is completely up to you. Heck, you can even leave it as a coil if you'd like. I think I'm going to do, 6-inch links, 7-inch links. And we're going to start by twisting it 3 times forward, just like that. Beautiful, plump, juicy looking sausage. All right. The next link, we're going to twist it 3 times towards us. I'm going to pinch it first, and then we're going to go 3 spins towards us. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. And there we go. We've got another beautiful fat link right there. Both of them are about the same size. And we're going to go ahead and do that. And all I did was I found a little mark right there on my cutting board that I'm using as a marker. This next one, we're going to twist 3 times forward, and we're going to follow that pattern of alternating the way we twist it until we're done with this particular sausage. Notice right here, see how this end is a little more bulbous than the rest? That particular side casing. We want to be careful there because if there's going to be a rupture, that might be where it happens. So we're just going to be very careful, and it looks like we're good to go. No problem. All right. So yeah, like I said, 3 times forward, 3 times backward until you are finished. Next thing you want to do is grab your sausage pricker or a needle and prick out any air pockets and just give the overall sausage a nice prick. This is going to allow for expansion. It's going to give any rendered fat or any kind of liquid that accumulates in the sausage a place to go, because if it doesn't have a place to go, your casing can get awfully tough and awfully chewy. That's not very nice. And because this has cure number 1, we are going to let this rest in the refrigerator overnight. That's not only going to help dry out the casing, but it's going to allow the cure the opportunity to do its work. Tomorrow, we're going to take this sausage, put it in our smoker, and finish up the process. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to be using a convection smoker from Smokin' It Smoker, and so my cook times and temperatures might be a little bit different than yours. Matter of fact, they're probably going to be a little bit shorter. Convection smokers will cook a little more evenly and a little bit faster than your traditional smokers, just because that air is being circulated inside that cabinet. Our sausage temperature probe is ready to go, and it's now time to fire up a little smoke. We're going to be using the Bella's Cold Smoke Generator, also from Smokin' It. This is an external unit that allows you to cold smoke or just add a little extra smoke to whatever meat you're cooking. I'm using pecan wood and hickory wood in this particular smoke. If you just want to use one or the other, that's fine too. My sausages, if you take a notice right here, are already pretty dry. They've been sitting at room temperature for about an hour. But if you notice your sausages are a little sweaty, make sure they're dry before you begin this process. We do have the upgraded pump for that cold smoke generator that's going to take care of any backflow issue. And our convection fan is set at 50%. So let me show you what the cooking schedule looks like in this smoker. We're going to start off at 100 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes. Like I said, my sausages were already dry. If your sausages are wet, you may want to increase that to about an hour. The system will automatically bump up to step number 2, where it will increase the temperature to 125, and it'll hang out there for about 45 minutes. Remember, we've got convection going, everything. After step 2 is done, it's going to automatically go to step 3, at which point the smoker is going to increase the temperature to 175, and here's where the probe comes in, until the internal temperature of our sausage gets to 145. And then finally, the last step, the smoker is going to back down that temperature to 145, and it's going to hang there for an hour. And that takes care of pasteurization, make sure my sausage is cooked properly, and it basically acts as a warming box. When it's in that final stage, I normally just let it hang there for about 10 or so minutes. And then I'll pull my sausages and get them into a water bath, at which point we will let them bloom, heat them back up, and then give them a taste. The chicken and sausage gumbo sausage. Woo! A project we've been having on the old to-do list for quite some time, and I'm glad to see it come to life for Celebrate Sausage Season 5. I mean, check that out. Look at these big, fat, plump, juicy-looking sausage links. I normally don't go this big for sausages, but I thought with this particular sausage, we're combining two different proteins. We kind of want to have that marbled look. I think it came out absolutely amazing. And this was our cut. One more peek. You've got that chicken, you've got that pork. Very, very juicy. A lot of greens in there. You got the vegetables. Okay. It kind of reminds me of gumbo. It's not screaming gumbo as far as the smells go, but it definitely smells awesome. I'll tell you that much. Let's just go ahead and give it a bite. What a wild flavor. That actually reminds me of a bowl of chicken and sausage gumbo in like the weirdest way possible. You get the chicken, you get the pork sausage. It's not quite andouille, but it's definitely smoked sausage. You couple that with the roux and the Trinity vegetables. You've got a sausage that actually embodies the spirit of the Cajun chicken and sausage gumbo. Let me do a quick cut of this other piece. Oh, look at that. That's awesome. Look at this slice right here. Can you see that? Beautiful marbling. Yeah, incredible marbling. And this is such a, I mean, it is so juicy. Look at that. That is amazing. I think this actually might be a little easier to eat in the slice form. Look at that. God, that looks great. Great bind on this sausage. And the textures between the two proteins are actually fairly similar, so it doesn't seem, so off-putting when you're eating, the chicken and the pork. Let's just go in like this. I like the casing. The casing is nice and tender. That definitely adds to that snappy experience. That's wild. It's got to be one of the wildest sausages I think I've ever eaten in my life, but I'm loving it. I gotta admit, this has got to be the strangest sausage eating experience that I've ever been a part of. You gotta understand, gumbo is my favorite food of all time. I've been eating it for almost 50 years, and to have a sausage literally taste like I'm eating a bowl of gumbo without the rice, golly, it's kind of blowing my mind. I'm not entirely sure how to process it. There's a large element of me that's confused, that's not really sure what's going on. With that being said, the recipe itself is absolutely beautiful. I'm glad that we used the combination of chicken and pork. I'm glad that we seasoned the chicken very simply and the pork more like a Cajun sausage because it added this contrast of flavors in each bite. I am glad that we smoked it. I don't think it would be the same if it wasn't smoked. That does sort of bring that andouille element and adds a lot to this particular sausage. And at the end of the day, we were trying to make a sausage that tastes like chicken and sausage gumbo. This is it. If you want to try the recipe and please do. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. You'll find a recipe link in the description box below. And if you enjoyed this video or got something out of it in any way, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to this channel and you enjoy sausage making and you're always looking for fun and creative ideas for new recipes, you've come to the right place. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. And although we are rounding down season 5 of Celebrate Sausage, we still have a few more episodes to go, but stick around because at the very end of this video, probably right here, I'm going to put a playlist so that you can get caught back up, watch all of the episodes. We've got a lot of really great videos, some really fun and exciting guests on this year's show. Speaking of guests, in tomorrow's episode, we've got a real pro coming to us from Austria. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye-bye. Huh.